Good morning to all of you, and thank you for joining us for this session. We have a very distinguished panel of speakers to talk about this topic, creating a sustainable talent pipeline. I think some of you who joined us in the earlier session, one of the key takeaways from the G20 and leading into the ASEAN Chairmanship of Indonesia is how do we collaborate within ASEAN, especially to first of all develop talent, but secondly also for many of the business leaders to retain talent and to continue to groom talent, right? As we know, ASEAN is very fortunate in the sense that we have one of the youngest demographics in the world. Many of us call it the demographic bonus, but if we do not take care of this youth, it will become a demographic curse, because we will have a very difficult time managing them. We will have many angry young youth who don't have jobs. And one of the key things that we mentioned earlier was, how the colleges and educational institutions prepare their young graduates to be future job ready. Although I really don't know what that means, because you can never prepare for the future. But that is a challenge, I think, facing many of us. So let's get started. Let me just introduce my panel, very distinguished speakers, and they come from various industries, so I've tried very hard to put together the panelists from diverse industries and views, but they all have one key objective, which is talent management and how do you groom talent. So on my immediate left is Mr. Hugh Edmiston. He's the Senior Vice President of the Singapore Management University. Hugh is actually in charge of the university's overall direction and program, and the Overseas Office Jakarta, which is just recently established in Indonesia, which is SMU's really part of SMU's bold vision to engage more deeply in the region. Hugh, of course, oversees that office. To his immediate left is Pak Steven Yudianto. Steven is the Senior Vice President of Human Capital Strategy at Bank Mandiri. We also have Ibu Indrijati Rahayoe. She's the Chief Human Resource Officer of Prudential, Sharia, Indonesia. Welcome. We have Pak Albert Luhur. Pak Albert and I share something in common. We are both graduates from Indiana University. So happy to have Indiana University alumni with me today. Albert is the Executive Director of Summarecon, Agung. And we have Ihsanuddin, Usman. He's the Human Capital and Director of Pelindo. So we have a port, we have a property company, we have a Prudential insurance company, Bank Mandiri, of course, everybody knows, and of course, an educational institute. So let me start with Hugh. Hugh, if you can just maybe give us some framework in terms of how do we think about talent today, and what do you think, from your perspective as a university, where are the key trends heading in terms of talent development, and where do you see the big gaps?
Okay, well, thanks very much, and I'm not sure I feel distinguished, but I do feel privileged to have the opportunity to speak today. I think I can provide a framework for you, but I think the challenge is what are the jobs for the future? That is the real issue. I've had the opportunity of speaking to a couple of colleagues during coffee, and one topic was about medicine and general practitioner. I don't think we'll need general practitioners in 20, 30 years' time because of the technologies and the devices which will be implanted. So encouraging somebody to have a lifelong career in medicine, should we be doing that? Question mark. And I also think the voice of the youth is actually not heard loud enough. I did some work, some research work when I used to be a vice principal at Edinburgh University. And one of the most informative things that I gained from that discussion was what the young people want and the challenges that young people have, their hopes, their desires, their ambitions, and they're quite different to mine. Their career paths are completely different to mine. And the challenge I think universities have, and colleges, is actually getting their heads around that model and how it's evolving and how we provide an educational experience. So as a starting point, now let me try and provide a framework. So I think there's 4 elements associated with the framework that we need to consider. The first off is around regional framework. And that's really around collaboration, student exchange, etc. But it goes beyond education. We should be thinking about innovation. We should be thinking about research, etc. Then I think there's a local, or within country. And I think governments actually have a role to play there in terms of preparing people for their careers. Then locally, you have a business and a corporate responsibility, and that's where the business leaders have to get involved. And they also need to collaborate both with the government and work in partnership with them to understand where you want to land in 20 years' time from an economic perspective. And then you also, as an individual, have a responsibility for your own education. And so I think it's those 4 elements that need to come together within a framework. And then I think there are 3 parameters associated with educational experience. The first one is academic. Okay, so going to school, going to college, studying whatever topics you wish or you have an interest in. But then there's life experience as well, which I think we often forget about life experience and we forget about competencies. So a lot of graduates from universities go into industry and they're not actually fit for purpose because they haven't had the opportunity to get real life experience. They understand the theory, but what business and industry are looking for is people going to hit the ground running. So this is something that we're looking and we're trying to address right now. And I think the other thing is practical skills. So we always talk about academia, we talk about professions, but in actual fact, what we see throughout the world, we need skilled tradesmen and women. We need plumbers, we need electricians, we need people that are capable of building new infrastructure, etc. And I don't think there's enough attention paid to that particular career path. And I think a lot of regional or local economies actually, particularly out in the countryside, are actually underpinned by those traditional professions and paths, etc. So there's that. But the key question is where do you want to land in 20 years' time? What is your business model? What does it look like? Because as a leader, that will actually underpin where you want to identify the talent pools, how you want to select, but then what you do to actually nurture and develop that talent whilst they're in your organization or your company. So that's the framework. And I talked a little bit earlier on about the unintended consequences as well, and I don't think enough attention is paid to the unintended consequences. So encouraging kids into certain career paths, etc., when in actual fact, in the back of our mind, we know that that career may not exist in 10 years' time, 20 years' time. I think there's a stat that I read recently that 70% of the jobs don't exist that are going to actually be available in 2030. How do you plan for that? How do you anticipate that? So, and don't forget what the kids want. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you very much, Hugh. How do you gauge what the kids want?
You ask them. Again, I think that's the first thing we should be doing, is going out and asking them. And what I was quite shocked by was the concerns and the fears that are facing of the youth today. I'm sat here and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to retire by the time I get to the age of 60, 65, something like that. I've put a bit of money aside. The kids turn around and say, we're never going to retire. We're going to work until we drop. And so the point about that is that we want an education that actually allows us to indulge in our pastimes, our interests, not so much around professions. So we've actually got to enjoy doing what we do. And so give us the opportunity, as part of our education, to take those interests, those pastimes, those hobbies, etc., but also give us the basic business principles so that we can actually translate our interest into a model that allows us to go out there and make a living. And the young people aren't driven or motivated in the same way that my generation was by money. And demonstrating that wealth in terms of the watch you wear or the car that you drive, etc. They are much more minded from a social perspective in terms of actually contributing to communities. And a lot of the spin-outs I used to see coming out of the university, particularly from women, actually, were around the social enterprise, where they genuinely wanted to, help local communities and take technology and adopt that. And all they wanted to do was to make enough money so that they have a reasonable quality of life.
Thank you very much. If we can maybe bring in Pak Stephen. From your perspective, Bank Mandiri, of course, is one of the largest, if not the largest, bank in Indonesia. I'm sure, every year you hire new graduates, you try and train and develop those who are already in your bank. How do you see this whole issue of talent? How do you, as a bank, how do you address it?
Okay, thank you. So I think there are a lot of challenges currently that we are facing. Yeah. First of all, then everybody is aware about it. It's about the digital things. Yeah. Currently, we have 2,500 branches all over Indonesia. That might be soon. Yeah, we will convert it into more digital. Yeah, we will be no longer needs the teller or customer service. That now, you can do it by online. Yeah, even though we have research that people that many cases or quite often goes to teller, the most cases is replacing the ATM card or requesting the password change and so on. But now it's all digital, and suddenly the work of the customer services is gone. Right, so that's some things that we need to really think. Like you mentioned, the futures is not 10 years or 15 years that will happen, but this is now. The future happening now because of COVID, because of the pandemic is becoming the catalyst for our transformation. That is one. The second one is the demographic shifting, because currently we have like 70% of our total population is millennials. I think there are some basic things that everybody needs to be aware. It's not easy to working across generations. And it's quite basic in terms of leadership. Yeah, I'll give you an example that couple of months ago, that's one of management trainee or fresh graduate is approaching me, and then he told me, "Pak Steven, I want to complain. Why? You said that at the very early beginning that we will be developed in Bank Mandiri. We will be coached intensively." Yeah. I said that then, but I never been coached in my program. Okay, then I'm just curious, right? Why? Yeah. Then I asked the person that's responsible to be his coach. And then suddenly this person, no, that's not true. Every week I met him. I gave him instructions. The perception of coaching from maybe the older generations, and especially maybe in the SOE, is giving instructions. But from the perspective of millennials, coaching is a discussion. You give us space to find a problem. This is really a basic things. Yeah. So rather than thinking about that, then actually this is some things that an eye-opener for me, because we assume that everybody can coach. But the way they do coaching, maybe we need to revamp it now, especially from the newer generation, who they demand more space to have creativity, to solve the problem and so on. Because there's some also research that told me that millennials think that they are smarter than their boss. Right? So that's why we need to change all the leadership style landscape now. Yeah. Second one. And the last one, I think this is coming from, because aside from my role in Mandiri, I also being a Chief Learning Officer for BUMN, or SOE, Leadership and Management Institute. And based on the assessment that we conducted for all the board of directors and BOD -1, I think there are 4 areas actually need to be developed. Yeah? First is, and I'm not surprised, is the strategic orientations. Yeah? And why? Remember, the coaching type of this SOE is give instructions. They were not allowed to think about long term, they're just waiting for instructions. Right? So that, and strategic orientation, when I found out, is not an easy capability to be developed only in the classroom. Yeah. So that is one. The second one is global business savvy. And especially in SOE, not many, you know, have an exposure. So that's why I think the collaborations of talent exchange between the regional, I think is really need to be executed later on. Yeah, we need to think about how should we accommodate this one. The third one is change management. We have capability to design change, but we are not have capability to manage the transition process. We are very smart to give vision and so on, but we are not have capability to allow that change, right? Why? Because sometimes people think that change is only a business process. They forget to transform the culture or transform the people, but that is really the most difficult part, right? And last but not least is aligning performance for success. What does it mean, this competency? Sometimes people here in Indonesia is maybe because our culture is harmony, it's so hard for us to tell a constructive feedback. Yeah. So meanings that, yeah, you know, when the boss tell the feedback to the team, they will say that, yeah, it's a good, well done, and so on and so forth. Even I got some inquiry from some of the board. They do not want to give quite constructive feedback to the team because they worry that the team will not be motivated later on. Because the value is harmony. It's very hard to them to give really, you know, a straight feedback. Yeah? So it's not easy. So that's why there's some culture part that we need. I believe that in the millennial generation, this will be solved later on. But again, still here, we have some issue there.
Okay, thank you, Pak Stephen. I think you've given us great insights, yeah, instructions and you know what coaching really means, yeah. So, Ibu, maybe from your perspective, you know, within the insurance industry is of course a very traditional industry, you know, steeped in certain ways of doing business, but again, you know, digitalization, COVID, millennials, everything is upside down, yeah. How do you handle that within Prudential and within the industry as a whole? How do you handle this whole issue of, you know, dealing with millennials and talent, you know, developing talent within your organizations, and maybe, you know, lastly, where do you see the future of the insurance industry?
Thank you, Shoeb, and thank you for having me to be here as, you know, the speakers and sharing. Basically, I'm very glad that, you know, one of the output and you know, priority for G20 is actually 3 things: health, energy, and digitalizations. I think the first, health, is somehow, I would see myself is still being, you know, under exposed in terms of how we really build this focus in the nations like Indonesia or even in the world. I would say that the COVID that has just passed 2 years ago actually teach us that if we are having the same enemy across the world, we are all together, stick together, and work together collaboratively. I think that is also, I would say, something that we can replicate, that collaborations into talent educations that we are discussing. We still have Ibu Dewi here who facilitating the first sessions. That the biggest homework for nations across the world right now is actually talent supply. And I think what we need to do here is how we bring the accelerations of our new generations, in this case is millennial and Gen Z, how we bring them to have readiness sooner than when we were developed earlier. So I think every company needs to think about what kind of accelerations development that they need to implement in the companies. That is bringing the new generations to be the leaders sooner than it was before. For me, for example, in my generations, you can be the CEO in 10 to 15 years. That is common. But right now, if you speak to Gen Z, sorry guys, you will need to work for 10, 15 years to be CEO. They will not work in that company because they want to be CEO perhaps 3 to 5 years from their graduation. So that's the reality. I think what is, something we need to learn is that, we are moving into the era that things have to be fast, have to be accelerated, and have to be all together. For Gen Z, for us, previously, when we work from 9 to 5. When we have fun, or we learn perhaps outside the working hours, and we have fun outside the working hours. But for Gen Z, they want 3 in 1. 3 things in one. They want the office is where they can work, where they can learn, where they can have fun. In one. So if only the company, the place, the corporate can give them 3 in 1, work, learn, and fun at the same time, they will stay. That's part of the retentions. And in another things that I think the distinctive, preference of our new generations right now is all in one. Not just 3 in 1, but all in one. The COVID era has teach us that actually we can do everything from home. Everything. Working, learning, playing, socializing, everything, and even parenting at home. That perceptions has also given the understanding from the new generations, even though, perhaps me, myself, still struggling to understand that because of the complexity. But the new generations born with the complexity to do everything in one. I still cannot believe, for example, my son's currently 22 years old, but when he studied, he wants to study in Starbucks, not in the study room or study table, in a Starbucks, together with the teachers or whatever, but in Starbucks or together with friends. For us, and sometimes study and watching YouTube at the same time. So that is not what we get used to it. But from our new generations, they get used to that complexity. So for them, what work means is that I can work everywhere. I can work in the office, I can work at home, I can work everywhere, I can work with doing something else. Whether this is socializing, YouTubing, or whatever, and social media, calling things, watching movie at one. So I think when we learn that kind of preference, then it is the job for the company or for whoever is currently in the educations and in developing our talent to think about what kind of accelerations that we need to do. Looking at the gap of the talent we have right now, I think we have to be honest, we have many gaps. Gaps in the digital talent, gaps in health talent, gaps in almost everything. So what kind of accelerations programs that we need to do in making our talents ready sooner than it was before? That's first. And the second, perhaps, I think because we have a very limited resources, we need to be focused. If for the Indonesians, for example, I keep on saying what Indonesians want to be known for when it comes to talent. Do we want to be known for a tourism talent? Do we want, because we have so many great places in Indonesia to be visited? Do we want to be known as digital talent? Because we have some, many of unicorns born in Indonesia. Who do we want to be? I think that's the homework for the countries. Back to industry that I am working right now, I think the big homework for us is actually insurance, health is the big ecosystem that we need to crack. Who are the collaborators amongst those industry? I'm very glad that the Minister of Health is just launching what we call one single data for the patients across the hospital, something that it was taboo sebelumnya. So before we thought that was a taboo to really share the health data of the patients, but moving forward, it is no longer taboo as long as this is for the benefit of the bigger purpose. So I think back to this, I'm still thinking that while digital is important, but digital is still enablers for all industry, across nations. Yes, we have a big gap on digital talents, but don't forget that we also still have a big gap on other talent that we want to be focused on. So I think back to your question, Shoeb, how the industry needs to shape. I think if we are able to identify what talent we want to focus on in growing the talent that is supporting every industry. And for example, in the insurance, I think we rely so much on the health talents. It took me 4 months to just get one medical medical experts who works in insurance, because medical expert is not just in a hospital. In the pharmaceutical we need medical, in the insurance we need medical as well. So still shortage. And I think back to that, education is still very expensive.
Yeah.
And with the crisis, recessions next year, I think it's getting, the inequality of talent getting bigger. So I would also encourage and call for everyone on how to really bring the accelerations of talent together, not just within the industry, but also in the nations. And I'm glad that this morning we are even talking about across the Asians, how we realize that, how we democratize the educations, how we closer the inequity of talent gap and talent quality within the industry within our company. For Prudential, for example, we do a lot of accelerations program. We identify talent from the beginning. Even the first year they just joined Prudential, because that is actually the way we put accelerations over there. Put them directly with the leaders in the company in order to bring the accelerations. We still believe 70-20-10. But now the 70 and 20 is getting bigger and is getting closer together. 70 is a job, on the job training, and 20 is a collaborations and mentoring and coaching with the leaders. I think those are the power. The 90% of educations are the power for us to make the accelerations.
Thank you very much, Ibu. Yeah, I think you're right. Acceleration is going to be critical as we see how things are moving so fast. Yeah, and yeah, I think the old ways of thinking of career is also done. Yeah, I mean we are no longer thinking of 20-year or 30-year career. Now we are looking at how am I going to move within industry. So coming to that, Albert, in your industry, Summarecon is one of the largest property developers. I think you do must be doing a lot of urban planning, also building materials, cutting edge technology. Where do you source talent from, and how within your company, how do you develop talent? It's not working. Push it up. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I'm from Summarecon, so maybe I just a little bit explain how our industry or how my company works. So we are building township, so we are not just building houses. Currently, Summarecon have 8 township in Indonesia. So this is something that is very big business. Yeah, we think after the COVID, because actually during the COVID, yeah, many people are talking the business are down and everything. But actually last year we booked our best history revenue, yeah, for Summarecon. So the highest book in the revenue. We are very glad. But that's what as all the panelists, as the speaker are talking about the changes, right? So we got this, how to say, the changes of the lifestyle of these millennials and something like that. We quickly catch it during the COVID. Actually, I just pulled the data. 70% of my buyers are 35 years old and below. So these young people are buying houses. But actually, when we read the newspaper, there are so many saying that the millennials are not buying houses. They are spending. But in my case, it's different. 70% of my buyers are millennials. That's why we are looking why. As Ibu was saying, they want to do everything at home, everything. Those lifestyle, we get them very fast. I mean, we change our housing development, how the situation, because after the COVID, actually, people realize the importance of homes. Before, maybe most of our time we are outside, we are not at home. But now we realize homes is important. But they are not just buying the home, they are buying the surrounding area, the township and everything. So that's why when this is a very big business, I was saying that the township, yeah, where we building malls, hotels, many facility, that is actually something new. The challenge of us is the talent they're able to fulfill in those new maybe facility or new, we said the management of the township. Before, when we sell houses, we just sell house. But now we manage the township, we manage their garden, we manage everything. So those millennials, when they come back home, they just enjoy the home. They don't need to take care of their gardens and all the stuff. This management, of course, it's easy, we said it, but it's difficult to find those talents. Especially in Indonesia, those, construction workers, and they are called informal workers, yeah. They are not really acknowledged, but when we see, this is a very big part, yeah. Where every time when we talk about the growth of the country, we always talk about investment, investment of the building, yeah, infrastructure and everything. But we actually don't really appreciate those workers to, how to say it, they still considered as informal worker. So the gap is that we want to move forward, but then those people are still, we don't really appreciate them that much. That's why sometimes when we want to go to build something like called luxury houses and everything, we have to get a lot of talents from outside, from Indonesia, because we don't appreciate there. But actually, they are not, we said, they are smart people or they know what to do, but it's just not appreciated and not well paid. That's why, so they think, oh, better we go to the startup, yeah, it's paid better. But actually, this is something very important to build our country, yeah. Construction, real estate, to build mall, build hotel and everything to generate the growth of the country. So what I see is the appreciation of us on when we want the growth, but certain level of people, especially in the construction area, is not really being really appreciated. For us, how we get talented is talent people is, of course, now as the panelists or speakers say, the millennials, they want it to be, how to say, grow fast or promoted fast. They we get them, they are all very smart people, but the problem that we face is the character, you see. So when they get in, as maybe Ibu was saying, they want to do whatever they want, but then in the company it's not that easy, yeah? So these few years what we have been doing is to train and to the company culture, yeah? We are very strongly focusing on the company culture, so that people are working with us, they understand how the culture, how they appreciate the company. Yeah? So actually Summarecon is still a family-owned company, and our company culture, we use Confucian. Yeah? So it's something that is a Chinese many years philosophy. Yeah? And this we slowly train and explain, and we feel there is many feedback, yeah, good response, yeah. So when they work in us, they not just for the money, but for example, family balance, teamwork, and all those stuff that we have been pursuing to them. So they how to say, they can stay longer, not just thinking promotion, money, and all those stuff. Yeah, maybe it's from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Albert. Yeah, I think you're right. Property companies are no longer just building. Yeah, they're actually designing and managing what I would call urban centers. It's not just, you know, townships. I think it's an old phrase. Yeah, but now you're really called urban centers and smart cities. So you also have to employ new technology in your townships.
Yeah. Smart city is something new. Many people are talking about smart city, but actually doesn't know actually what smart city means.
Exactly, exactly. Okay, Isa, you run Pelindo, which is a port operator. Of course, you know, I think you probably different industry, yeah, more logistics. From your perspective, where talent is involved, especially in your senior level or your middle level managers, what are the gaps within your industry and within your company?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm thanking for this opportunity. I'm from Pelindo, PT Pelabuhan Indonesia. It is a merged company. We just merged last year from 4 companies, Pelindo 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we are become one company. Talking about millennials and top-level management, something's very interesting for me. I just accompanied my millennials when we visited Singapore 1 month ago, also visited SMU, but I found something different because before I little bit skeptic about my millennials. I think that they just busy with their play, they don't really care with the company, they don't really care what contribution they want to have. But because I really accompanied them and then discussed with several companies, I found that actually they really care about their companies. We are state-owned company. We are not private, so we really care about what kind of contribution that we can give to the country. And this is something very important to them. So probably quite different with the other millennials. Millennials in Pelindo, they really want to follow their long life employment. When I discuss with them, no one of them want to leave the company if they have the opportunity. So talking about this, we have to give them the space. They have different kind of a mindset. They think differently compared to us. But they still can contribute not for tomorrow, but for today. So giving them the space, giving them their, the trust, I think this is the more important. And I agree with Steve that coaching from our perspective, especially in state-owned enterprise, is like instruction. Coaching culture is not really our culture, honestly speaking. So give the tools, also the insight, how coach should be delivered by the top management. I think will be give the trust from our millennials that they have the space and they can do some things quite differently with the seniors, but that's okay. Last week we discussed in our board that how can we accelerate our millennials. Honestly speaking, in our company, we have so many seniors, and they are really stick with their own way that sometimes not really relevant with today. But discussing about this is not easy as we are a state-owned enterprise, probably different compared to the privates. Now, so the issue is, can we have a more flexible project arrangement so the millennials can contribute more? This is the some things that we want to have. Next year, early of next year, we will send our millennials to join apprenticeship program. They will spend 3 or 4 months in companies in 4 countries, and we want to give them the opportunity to learn a lot, because I think most of the leadership skills cannot be taught in the class. Yes. They have to expose themselves. They have to facing the challenges. So the way they absorb the idea is based on their own experience. So this is the way we are managing to give the millennials the opportunity, as well as to give the insights for the seniors. We don't talk about our job, we talk about our legacies. So how can we make our legacy so the company will have a sustainable competitive advantage? That's all.
Wow, thank you so much. Yeah, I think you're right, in terms of giving space. And that really, I think, brings us to the way companies are managed. Across all these industries that we spoke about, Hugh, the whole idea of how companies are managed and management processes and systems are changing with this, I mean, SMU has just set up an office in Jakarta. From your perspective, before I throw it open to the floor, maybe one last word. Why did you choose Jakarta, and how do you think SMU can work with Indonesian corporations?
Well, if I can go back to the framework that I talked about earlier on, talking about regional talent, local talent, business, corporate, and individual in terms of taking responsibility. The first conversation that we had this morning, talking about the G20 outcomes, etc., and the challenges that we're facing, somebody's got to step forward. because you've got to turn action into, or words into action. And so SMU has decided that it wants to set up an office in Indonesia because of the location. It's close to Singapore. We've already got an established alumni here, and we've got strong connections within Indonesia. But I'm also conscious and cognizant of other universities operating out of Indonesia, foreign universities. So we need to take we want to develop a different model. We want to differentiate ourselves from that. And I think at the heart of this is around partnerships. What I've come to learn after working in various universities over the last 25 years, that universities sometimes, despite the fact that it can be world-class experts in there, they're detracted or separated to a degree and insulated from the real world. So all universities, if they want to be successful, actually have to build partnerships with local industry, local business, etc. And I see that transformation starting to happen with some of the older, more traditional universities overseas. So what SMU wants to do is it wants to actually sit down and work in partnership. It wants to understand some of the technologies that you have here, some of the philosophies, some of the best practice that you have here, and see how we can take that back into Singapore. But also, we're very happy to share what we have in terms of what might be regarded as best practice. And SMU is an international university. So we have people from over 50 different countries that actually do education, research. And the other thing we're really interested in is innovation. And just listening to the conversation from my 4 colleagues about some of the challenges that you have in terms of coaching within the banking sector, some of the challenges around the insurance sector, development and trying to, property development, etc. Now, I've been lucky enough to be associated with projects and programs around each of those 3 elements in this role, but also in past roles. And I think the one thing I would say that differentiates us from KPMG, PwC, etc., you employ them, you get their formula or their approach to solving a problem which they've developed. I think with universities, we are more open-minded and we want to actually develop a solution that's specific to your requirements based on the knowledge, experience, and expertise that exists within the university. And the other thing I would say is if you're going to build programs, do so with real ambition. Because I've seen other countries at this moment in time, insurance companies, for example, I work with an insurance company because they could see the aging population. And the insurance company says, we don't know where to place our products in 20 years' time with an aging population. It's very expensive if old people end up in old people's homes. How can we keep people in their homes where they want to be for longer? So we ran a program in partnership with them, looking at how new technology could be developed and delivered into the home, linked to the local medical healthcare infrastructure, real-time data, to see how we could keep people in their homes for longer. And so that was one. The other one worked with the city council to talk about big data and how that city council wanted to actually become the data capital for Europe. And so they trained 100,000 people in 5 years around big data. They built infrastructure around robotics, etc. And you have the opportunity here to do that in terms of ASEAN, in terms of collaboration, etc. Because I think the sense of collaboration is much stronger here than what I've seen in other countries. So for us, we want to be part of that journey. We want to be open, we want to share our expertise, but we also want to learn from you, and we want to come up with practical solutions to some of the challenges that you have.
Thank you. I think that is great. We can open questions, observations, thoughts from the floor. You're all participants, remember that. So, yes, Nalin, and then Patrick.
Thank you. I think we had a range of insight from everybody, and I agree with all that was said. There are 2 key stakeholders that are shaping young minds, right? You have the college system and you have the workplace when they come. Stephen also touched upon the culture aspect, etc. I don't think we should go on and whine about what the millennials should do. I don't think they need to do internship with us. I think senior management should go and do internship with them. Because they will outlive us, they own the earth after we are gone. This whole thinking that they need to do all this, I think we've got it upside down. All our board of directors, managing directors, CEOs should be sent to millennial camps, and they should spend 3 months there as internship and then come back to lead these companies. The second point is, I've had the privilege of living in this country for 5 years and going to hundreds of universities. Most of them, the rectors and the staff, they know higher education is being disrupted like never before. And Hugh made the point about some jobs that can't be done by machines, so plumbers, carpenters, the food that is grown for us, farmers. I don't see universities taking out degree courses for all this because it's not sexy, right? Better to turn out MBAs. When you go to these universities and you see the management, etc., they know they are being disrupted. We should look back at what happened to other industries that got disrupted. What happened to transportation when Uber came? What happened to banking with fintech? What happened to Kodak? What happened to Nokia? What happened to BlackBerry? The older companies failed to adapt because they always thought incremental change and baby steps and a quick facelift and makeover will make them look young. So they never really thought it through. Universities are doing the same thing. They think digital is putting the same lecturer in front of a camera. The new age edutech companies also have not got it right. They are still into giving tuitions or reselling courses of universities, etc. I don't know the answer, but models will emerge where it will have to be thought through blue sky. This incremental change system will not work. Those are the 2 points I wanted to make.
Thank you, Nalin. Maybe Patrick, you want to go ahead?
Thanks. My name is Patrick Vaz. I'm an advisor to Modalco. Actually, just touching back on Nalin's point, right? We are really talking about how do we unlearn the last 20 so we can make sense of the next 20, right? That's really what we're talking about here, right? And I spot on, right? I want to maybe double down on what Nalin said. Most people who are taking decisions at the levels we are, in all these companies, and I'm sure all of you are people who are senior, who are talking about millennials. And I think, how do you teach an old dog new tricks? Is the question for all of us. To be honest, right? I mean, everybody here is pretty senior. Even the young guys, right, who are senior in their own companies, but are leaders of their new companies. So how do you teach an old dog new tricks, right? And how are universities, or how are we as people, forget people who are teaching, how are we learning ourselves to be better people tomorrow? And we talked in the previous session about, one world, one family, one future, right? I think really apt for what's going to happen for the next G20, but also I think very apt for us as individuals personally. And how are we taking that, and what do you guys feel is the way to really let us be more effective in what we want to do so that the world ahead is a much better place than what we are having at the moment? Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Maybe one last question. Oh, okay. 2 questions. Rob first, maybe, and then Poonam.
Sure, thank you. And I think great to hear the diversity of views, but the violent agreement on some of the challenges and potentially how we can resolve them. I think I felt like someone looked at me when there was a mention of younger folk in the room. I thank you.
You wish.
So I'd like to build on that and probably overshare my journey. We've spoken to a few of you earlier. I'm not a traditional student. I didn't see a need, value to undertake a traditional university degree at the time. I went straight into the workforce. Likewise, I'm also neurodiverse in a couple of ways. So ironically, I think the diversity these days is beyond the generational. I think we have another pivot there that is a huge opportunity for us as well to tap into talent. And for me, my career journey has not necessarily been planned. I've got the career plan documented, and it goes out the window kind of every month, because I tend to, as an individual, get picked or asked to take on a role due to demonstrable competencies, not my knowledge. And I think that builds on the theme here around the digitalisation will potentially reduce the need for individuals' knowledge. And that's potentially a paradigm shift from traditional education as well. It's not a know-it-all, but a learn-it-all, and how to apply that knowledge with my competencies. And as we spoke earlier, the ASEAN region, culture drives some competencies that are unique to the region as well, which I think are going to be a huge opportunity. But also there's some challenges in some competencies as well. And then that kind of led me to the culture conversation, which I think was a really important one. And I'll pick up on the reverse mentorship. Our CEO literally meets with what we call our MAC hires. They're either MBA students, fresh graduates, or interns, and the forums are there for learning. Most leaders have a pairing with an intern for feedback, for exactly the reasons everybody's spoken about here. We don't know what we don't know. How do they think, and how do we help them? How do we as an organisation learn and adapt to our customers, but also how do we adapt our culture internally? Because that's the last piece. We are coaching versus coachable. How do we help a pipeline of coachable learn-it-alls is utopia, yet harnessing everybody's individual strength, which is it's a large challenge. Because we've spent a lot of time in Microsoft on coaching. There's been a number of coaching courses we've done, competencies, reinforcement, and even evaluation of leaders and individuals, because everybody's a coach. And that has helped change our culture. I think we were a textbook on performance culture gone wrong. Previously, it's probably been well noted, well studied. We're on a journey, similarly to many here. But I think that I just wanted to bring that perspective and bring it to life, some of the concepts that were raised here, and also the opportunity for us to embrace, I think, non-traditional learning paths. But I will acknowledge at the same time, I stand here and think I want to go back to university. There are still skills and competencies the formal education will give you that I missed out on. So I don't think we're throwing universities out the window yet. There's an opportunity there.
Thank you. Poonam.
So I just wanted to touch upon a point as Ibu Indrijati spoke about everything now you can do at home. You can work from home, you can play from home, you can study from home. But what has happened over the pandemic is that people have found that they can do not one, not two, but even 3 jobs from home at the same time, simultaneously. Yeah, and which is why many companies are now facing the situation where people don't want to come and work at the office anymore, because that would mean that they would have to let go of their other 2 jobs. And so my question to you is, what are you doing, or what is being the reaction to this kind of freelancing, if you might call it?
Thank you. Maybe Ibu first.
I guess, yes, it's so hard to bring people back to office. It happens around March, April this year. We even do a lot of incentivized, programs in order to bring people back to home. But what makes it successful is that when the leaders back to office, and bring, leader is the one who bring people back to the office. But come back to your questions, Ibu. I think we need right now. Job is no longer identified as company, no longer identified as a positions. Job is what you can earn from. I think we need to soon be ready with what is called gig economy. We in Prudential has introduced that since mid this year, even though our introduction is still internal gig job, which is every business head can promote if they need a source, resource from other divisions to work on the projects. So you from other divisions 2 hours a week, 3 hours a week, and collect together to form a project. From IT, from finance, from HR, from operations, all together. That's what we call internal gig economy. But why we did this is really because we are preparing ourselves that if gig economy works soon perhaps, then we need to be open that everyone may not just happy with one job, not because just for the economy, but also because of their, maximizing their capabilities. So, for example, someone can be good in finance, but is also good as a, chef, for example. So how can they maximize those strengths and make them happy So I think that's the answer, Bu, for the future. All the corporates needs to be ready that we are open on certain job that is actually done not by permanent employees, but by the gig economies, gig workforce.
Thank you. I think that's very insightful. Hugh, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'd like just to pick up on a couple of comments from Nayland and Patrick and other colleagues speakers. Nayland in particular, you know, you were rightly, in my opinion, challenging the current university model. I'm living that journey right now, by the way. And many other universities are, particularly the older ones where traditionally they rely on their reputation. So I think basically the point you make about how do we engage with youth? How can we learn from youth? I think, Patrick, you raised this as well. I've been lucky enough to actually participate where I sit on boards, and we actually have a student representative from the community, actually, or 2 or 3 of them actually on the board as well. And I have to tell you, in my experience, these kids are really smart. They have an opinion, they have a view, and the board learns as much from them as they do from us. So you talk about coaching, mentoring. It's a great exchange in terms of actually understanding that. And these kids are not backwards in coming forwards. They tell you what it's like for the students who are actually going through your course at this moment in time. So my suggestion to you is to take risks and experiment. Why don't you put a couple of postgraduate kids on your boards, okay, and try it, see what it's like. See what you learn from them and they learn from you. See if you can develop that partnership. My experience is that it works really well. So that's the first thing I would say. The university model, let's talk about that. It's evolving, but it's evolving slowly. It's not happening fast enough. And what I would say is that COVID, nobody wants to change. It's only until you are forced to change. We've been talking about working from home, working remotely, the paperless office, for 30, 40 years, but it never happened. It's only until a global pandemic comes along that we are forced to change, okay? So we need to recognize that. We can encourage and we can incentivize people to change, but really, are we talking about real change? So talking about working from home, we also need to think about the unintended consequences from working from home. Mental health issues have gone through the roof as a consequence from people working from home, okay? They're in isolation, they feel disconnected, they're no longer part of a team. They feel isolated, and if you don't live with a family, you're sat there. So you end up talking to the dog or talking to the cat, you know, or the goldfish, and you go mad. And so all organizations have a duty of care to their staff. And as part of that duty of care to staff, I think you should encourage your employees to come back in part-time so that they can reconnect with their teams, so they can understand what's happening within the company, but also so the company can learn how they are and how they are feeling, okay? And so part of SMU, I mean, we're going through that same process, so I'm having to reconfigure a lot of our space right now, because we allow staff to work from home 2 days a week. It might go to 3 days a week, but any of my colleagues don't tell them that. But we're seriously looking at how we configure the space. We want to try and create a cafe kind of culture, okay? Because as you say, people, they can study from home, but they can also work in the cafe. So how do we create that ambience where people want to come to work because it's great coffee, because they can catch up with their colleagues, because they can sit in a relaxed environment? This is how we need to think more creatively, and we need to take risks.
Okay, thank you. Albert or Pa? Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I can add up about the millennials, yeah. That's how I'm trying to do. For example, before the COVID, yeah, our marketing expense is about 5% to 6%, yeah, to sell a house. And now, today, 25% of my house is selling through online. And my cost is only 0.2% for selling those houses. It's so much. So during the COVID, I let this millennial to manage my PR and this online team. Yeah, I mean, of course, how we think and they are thinking is so different. And we try and then we give them this, they lead, we just guide, you know. We don't tell them, oh, this video is not nice or whatever. And what I agree was, during the board meeting, I have a few of my just graduate, they just sit behind me, they just observe, I make the decision. But after the decision that I made, I always discuss with them. What do you think? What is their thinking? Because I mean, they are not in the board, so they cannot comment. But from there, we know how this millennial thinking, these old people are making decisions, and then, you know, usually might be wrong, yeah. But of course, they have not. But after a few sessions, we know how they're thinking, and this is so much different, yeah. I mean, they feel they have this how to say it, there's a pride, yeah. What they have been thinking, we follow. Even the board, that's they think they are so senior, they are listening to them. But of course, in the way that, yeah. And it's so glad that I have all when we are working from home, they are asking me when we can come to office, you know. They really want to come to office because, yeah, we give them this opportunity, yeah, to grow. And then when this achievement is made, for example, my marketing cost from 5%, I can reduce to 0.2, yeah, for this selling on how. It's all on them, you know. The board is not have any, how to say it, making this big achievement. It's all from them, and they feel it, you know. And I mean, from there, there's so much new people want to join those team. Yeah, I think we have to give them the opportunity. Yeah, this is what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Thank you, Pak Steven.
Okay, I have two recommendations basically. Yeah, I agree that is the education reform, and now it's progressing, but you know, it's not easy. It's still a long journey to go. And in Indonesia, I appreciate what they have done now from Campus Merdeka, because the concept of link and match, I think it's being discussed like a couple of years back. Yeah. However, the progress is still slow. But nowadays, when we initiate Campus Mengajar, I think this is some things that, yes, on progress still. Why? Because, you know, in many companies, many big corporations, actually we spend a lot of time to invest to onboard these fresh graduates. Like you mentioned, university do not really thinking about what is really the real need of the industry. For instance, like banking sector. What is the really need of the banking sector? They're just thinking that, okay, yeah, there is a latest research, latest trend in the world like this. I just give you an example. I think a couple of years back when Sharia banking is introduced in Indonesia, we actually need many, what we call, I don't know in the English verb, juru taksir emas. The one that can really, you know, appraise the gold. Yeah, because we have, you know, pound gold business in Sharia and huge in Indonesia. But there is no school actually taking care of this gold appraisal. Right? So a huge gap between the industry and the university, because they might look things differently. Yeah. And this one is actually being discussed. And the idea of actually, and this one is one of the homework, especially for Indonesia and our education reform, is to allow actually people from the practitioner to teach in the university. But now, oh no, you don't have a PhD degree, you don't have this one, you don't have this one, you cannot teach. Right? So, at the other side, maybe the internship is not goes to the student, it goes to the professors. Professors need to go intern to the corporations, right? So that is some things that might be one of the idea to reform the education system. The second one is the mindset of the leader. And I think there's a lot of leader, I know especially in the corporations, the challenge is to balance how they should managing performance and leading their people. They're doing good job in leading people to achieve the performance, but they forgot to grow them. Our leader is very capable or comprehend to create followers, but they were not able to create our future leaders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have Sachin, another 10 minutes. 12:45. Okay, Pak.
Yeah, my name is Agustinus from Ebengero. I like what Pak Stephen mentioned. Currently, we are facing the green industry. We are facing the smart industry. And we are facing the halal industry. All sector, I think, now thinking about the technology. It's like thinking about the symptom. What is the main problem, basically? If we see the fact, 16% of graduate from the bachelor are employment, jobless. Comparing to the diploma or polytechnic is 35% in the market currently. Who are responsibility for their career? Basically, is still parents. Mostly is father, not mother. But what I mentioned in the university, most faculty are book worship. Sorry to say, it's book worship. They only think the Bible is the textbook. They need to insert the expertise. Because the requirement, if I see and I speak to be a key speaker in the school, they are required to be a dean, head of department, should doctors, PhD, and so on, so on. We need to learn also with the master. If you think, we see the industry of Albert Luhur, even some the owner, no have a degree. They have what? Skill on the head. So bring the owner, bring the expertise, goes to the school. Not bring them out, pull them out, change. Not only student change, but the faculty, dean, go out to see the business. Because university only thinking the number of the student, how many students they are graduated, that's all. But
yes,
to supply the business, they are not thinking about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak. Yes, was that, wait, Nalin, was there somebody else on this? Yes, and then Ibu Dewi first, yeah, then we come back. Or maybe Ibu Dewi first?
No, I've really enjoyed this. I've really learned a lot. But I like the idea. Now, in the morning, we focus so much on the youth. And I'm very happy to say that now we are getting more modest, that we have to unlearn and learn a lot. And I think that this is our challenge. Our part of the region, the young population, very young. But at the same time, we are having a problem with aging society. And I would like to see that aging is not only related to healthcare. And so how do we keep our older generation to be not just healthy, but also remaining productive, or not just sending WhatsApp messages which are full of hoax, you know, because you know, that's why during elections or whatever, you know, apparently a lot of hoaxes happen in Indonesia. They're sent by 3 groups of people. No, maybe you shouldn't quote me on this. You know, by housewives, retirees, and civil servants.
Civil servants. Yeah.
That's it. But the joke aside, you know, so I would like to come back from the MSU and so on, because we are talking about love learning. It's easier said than done.
Yes.
Yeah, because it talks about circularity. Criticizing universities, we've been doing this all the time. But the fact of the matter is that, you know, you go to school not just to learn the subjects. The most important thing of studying is the ability to study again. It's a critical thinking, rationality, critical thinking. I mean, most of us here, you know, what did we study? And have we been able to do it? In my case, because I'm a researcher, what I studied and what I work in is quite, deterministic. I have, as a researcher on foreign policy, my key performance indicators, if I write about women only or about golf, it will not be counted. I will not get credit points for it. I have to publish on Indonesian foreign policy on ASEAN. So that there is a real career track. But you all do other things and you learn it on the job, the experience. Now, what I would like to see is from all of you on the board, the suggestions of getting the elderly coming into the real world, the deans and the professors going to internships is very good. But also, to what extent, in this education reform that you talk about, at what level are we thinking? Is it just at the tertiary level? Or do we go even earlier to that, bringing the students to the real world, so talking to them, inspiring them so that they know what they would do at the universities. And then how do you induct all of those retirees who are not retired and who are not tired, how to make sure that they remain productive, what sort of education reform that will actually encapsulate us. If we live, the next 10 years, that will be us.
Thank you. Baba.
My question is pretty much related to Bu Dewi's, but my question to the panel is related to how do you see the science of education as as the basis of your practical practices in coaching and educating your workforce. So that's the first question. How do you see the science of education here? What's the science foundation of the work there? Secondly, it has something to do with formal and non-formal learning, of course. If we talk about formal learning, then we talk about schools and universities. There's a lot of research in education science on that, the theoretical perspectives included. How education is supposed to give the knowledge, attitude, and then knowledge and understanding and attitudes to the learners. And related to related to Patrick's point about unlearning, the 20 years learning, that's adult education, adult learning. Do you agree on that? And then there's a lot of different expertise to conduct those businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Nalin, and then we'll go back to the wrap up with the panel.
Both the points I'm making are in lighter vein, so don't take it seriously. I think many of us get scarred by millennials because we had teenage children and our first experience was with them. The other one I just leave as a thought, again in lighter vein. Why is working in a company being made so complicated? Because I understand technical roles. Because for the rest of my life, the roles I play, father, mother, lover, husband, I don't need to go to school. Why has work been made so complicated?
You want to say? Okay, Seema, and then maybe Sachin, yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm right or wrong, but anyways, did we all live a boss era where we had the boss and when we just listened to them, and now if you're trying to replicate that, that's not going to function or work anyways, because the way I see my associates is not as my subordinate. I see her feedback, her inputs, her work as a part of the team. I work with her. I don't give her instructions. I say this is what we need to achieve and this is how we go about it. I feel that works better to get the best out of them. You groom them actually. You don't give instructions and then you don't be a boss, because I was told by my associate that this era is not about boss. It has changed. They want respect. They want to be treated fair in both approach as well as monetary aspect. I mean, if monetary aspect may be interesting and attractive, but if you don't give them the respect, then you can't retain the talent. You have groomed, you have invested in them, but if you don't, I think they will move on. They have only that much patience to deal with, but we had the patience to deal with the boss culture. I believe so. That's just my,
Thank you. Maybe Sachin, last one, and then we'll wrap up.
First of all, I think I must compliment you on the quality of this discussion. It's really amazing because, so many issues have come up around this talent pipeline kind of a thing. So I just had a comment or an observation, or I could say a surprise truth that suddenly came to me that actually, going on that old dogs learning new tricks issue. We tend to be looking at this, thinking that, the older dogs are the ones who got, experience, competency, it comes with age, right? And we all are talking as though, we need to save our jobs. But, look at two companies, I'll just mention two. There's Facebook, which was set up in 2004 by Mark Zuckerberg, who was 20 years old at that time. At that time, it's not a millennial observation at all. He was not a millennial then. Then you look at Gojek, which was set up in 2009 by Nadeem when he was 25 years old. And today these are two huge companies built by people who were youth. So, there is a lesson in this that, disruption, and you could say these two companies disrupted everybody else. But that's the potential of, having youth being the leaders of companies. So it's the answer of old dog, new trick is get a new dog. Right? We should be looking at having young people running companies. So why do we feel threatened? Why should we feel threatened, right? A business is a business. It can be led by anybody, right? The leader of that business can be a new dog, right? There's nothing wrong with that. We shouldn't be looking at age as a qualification, right? So looking at talent pipeline, instead of having talent pipeline, you should have leadership pipeline. What are we doing to make these young people into leaders that they can be leaders at the age of 20, 21, 22, 25? Maybe they'll do a much better job of building a company because I noticed one thing. The young generation can manage upwards into the older generation much better than the older generation are able to manage them downwards. Facebook today, the users are all us. Mark Zuckerberg built it at the age of 20. Who uses Facebook? It's us. He understood what his older generations wanted. But the older generation never understood what the younger people wanted because, what Nalin mentioned, your first experiences with your own children, right? So that has different barriers in understanding that relationship. So we should really be looking at, having young leaders in our new businesses. Like if I were to look at the Indonesia Economic Forum and say I want to do a youth forum, I'm not going to run it. I would look at somebody who's 20, 25 and they should take the lead because they'll know what to do. And it's an upward journey. They'll make it relevant to everybody upstairs. It's just a comment, but I think, it is something I would like to share. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Okay, last one.
Okay, my point is very simple. Okay, so we are talking about developing talent to a large extent, and we are talking about skills, we are talking about education, we are talking about curriculums and all those things. But one very important aspect that we are not touching about is developing the ability to take failures. Okay, and why something like we have everything accessible to us today, but the happiness index around the world has dropped down drastically. Why is that? Because people are working in silos. One of the most important things that the universities and schools bring to the table is people able to collaborate together. And what sports and other things that they can play together give them the ability to fail and come back from it. That culture is going away when people are all working in silos. So the most important parameter as a young entrepreneur and building a company and having the joy of working in a previous company where we grew from about $30 million to $400 million in a matter of 6 years, I've seen that one major difference that the company had was the culture, and the culture was created by not the oldest people in the company but the youngest people in the company. I was 32 when I joined the company and I already felt really old when I entered the company. And most of the employees were fresh graduates coming from tier 2 colleges, not tier 1 colleges, because they had the loyalty, they had the ability to learn. And one of the tricks that we used to hire very strong sales candidates was we went into engineering colleges, we went into computer science departments and asked who here doesn't want to code. Those are the people whom we recruited for sales, pre-sales and other functions because they are smart, They want to prove themselves and they do not want to be stereotyped as a developer or things like that. So we gave the opportunity for young people to come up. And a 25-year-old will be managing a book size of about $25 million. And they were able to do a great job. As a leader, our job is to give guidelines. Give them the psychological safety to go, try, execute, and tell them if you fail, it's okay. We have to reward people not for outcomes, but for effort. From a corporate standpoint, if we start bringing in performance metrics that reward people for effort, initiatives, and how they were able to build collaboration within the organization, and that leading to outcomes, then that will flip the way we run businesses today. And youth of tomorrow, that is what they need the most. They want the freedom, they want the ability to execute, and they want guidance when they need, not unsolicited advice. So that's my comment.
Thank you very much. I think I'll just give the panel 2 minutes each to wrap up, and maybe having listened to all of these various and fantastic suggestions, we all should go back to school tomorrow, join SMU. Paisna.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I have two conclusion for myself. Number one is about can millennials be leaders? In SOE, we have a mandate that for 2025 we should have 25% of our leaders are millennials. I think the issue is not about diversity. The issue is about inclusion. That's the thing that for the time being still a problem, can I say, in SOEs, especially in my company, because we have diversity, but how to invite them to be more productive and inclusive is a challenge. That's number one. Number two, talking about university and corporate, I think corporate also has a responsibility to invite the university, the academicians to join with us. I can give an example. In our company, now we have Port and Logistic Institutes. We invite experts throughout Indonesia to have informal discussion for every 2 months to discuss about what's going on. And we invite them to speak, to give their aspiration as well as their recommendation for us. It's very good for us to know exactly what the academician thinks about the business. Sometimes they also invite by the government, and yes, sometimes the recommendations not really align with our industry. So talking about the relationship is not only based on the university. We also have to be proactive to invite them to have discussions. Thank you,
Pa. Albert.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I agree. The most is the seniors should the one that go back to the school, yeah. Because I think it's how we don't want the thing to be changed, you know. We want to be still the leaders, you know. The millennials follow us, but the things is changing, yeah. As was saying, the youngs that makes all the new ideas. That's why I was always make my senior managers and all those, how we should go back and think. I always in the board meeting, they should never suggest anything that they have done before as something that is new. They have to think something new. You know, if they always come back with their achievement and something like that, sometimes the senior is too proud of what they have been achieved, and then think, oh, this is the way how to be done. This is the way how we went. But the world is changing so much, especially after the pandemic. So I agree. The university, especially how to adopt, yeah, because these are the millennials are coming up with so much idea and so much thing they can do, but it's not sometimes being accepted by this senior management in the company. Yeah.
Thank you. Ibu.
Yes, I guess. Hello. Hello. Yes. No. Okay. Boleh ya. Yes, I guess here I have also two things. I like very much what Pak Ihsan said about inclusive. I think in Indonesia we still have those inclusiveness, a culture, not just in a corporate, in a governance, but also in a society. I like the idea of exchanging and copying what the Pak Stephen mentions about Campus Merdeka, bringing students into the university, bringing the institutions to the corporate, and also perhaps bringing governance officers into the corporate, vice versa. I think that's the key of collaborations actually, not making different institutions having different silo in terms of how they look things, but it's also actually we are all having the same missions of really accelerations in terms of talent and bringing a better quality in terms of talent in Indonesia or even in the world. So I would say that collaborations and inclusiveness is really what is key here in bringing the talent all together, moving into the same missions, regardless whether this is a corporations or governance or education institutions. If we all work together, I think we will be able to have a better results. That's the first. The second is, I think, in terms of lifelong learning. I think there has to be a clear mechanisms. What does it mean with lifelong learning? I like the way that we are all about to live the productive, era, and the new generations is going to come up. I think if we want to have lifelong learns, it has to start from us first. I would really encourage everyone here who perhaps has, a wealth of knowledge to really either, write in the book, write in a blog, write in a Facebook, write in any social media about what do you know, because of that, what do you know is not just known by you yourself, but it's also by, the people who read that. Because this is matched really with how the young generations learn. They not just learn in the school, they learn, the biggest learning is actually from social media, TikTok, Instagram, whatever. So if we are also have the obligations of really, putting our experience, our wisdom, our, wealth of knowledge into the social media, it is even longer in terms of age than perhaps us in the world. So I think that's the two things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bu. Pak Stephen.
Okay, thank you. So for me, I think I just remember the one research, I think in 2015, conducted by a corporate governing board. So their research is really about the performance of local Asian leaders versus the expatriate leaders in MNC throughout Asia. And happened to be that one of the things that Asian good about, they are very good in technical expertise. They're really street smart. But they're really lacking in terms of developing others and communication skills. So that's why I think these two issues, we need to bring this down to the university level. And like Bu Dewi mentions about the critical thinking, I think beside the critical thinking, leadership or leading people, I think is a critical skills and should be developed in the university. And sometimes in the corporate world, we just see that GPA is not enough. We're still looking for the extracurricular activity and so on and so forth. So why don't in education sector, we also really think about how they can really include leadership experience in their throughout, educations, right, in the bachelor degree. So how this really merged? I think that is something that become our homework, because that is really critical, especially when, Pa also mentioned how to accelerate the millennials taking the leadership positions. Because leadership, it's not happen, you just learn in the classroom, right? It's just you need to experience. And then how, if we can really institutionalize that in the university. Thank you.
Thank you, Pa. Hugh.
Okay, well, just
the last word.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's the last word. I'm sure the conversations will continue into lunch, but very quickly. I mean, for me, I'd just like to thank Stephen, Patrick, Nayland for some of your questions, because it's given me pause for thought. What I would say is I'm quite unique within the university context because I'm responsible for the business aspects. I'm surrounded by academics. What I will tell you is that all universities globally have to become more business-like. Okay? The pursuit of research as a means to an end in itself has to change. But unfortunately, that's how you build an academic career within a university, is based on your world-class research. So what I would say is, I also see an unsatisfied demand here, based on some of the questions that were raised here. And so what I would like to say is 3 key words, which is partnership, programs, and projects. What I do know is that universities will not be able to exist and provide the educational, research, and innovation experience that you're looking to us to deliver unless we do it in partnership with you. I would also say is we're very happy to come out and visit you in your location, in your factory, in your company, etc. And we are very happy to sit down and see what we can do to tailor, or work in partnership to see what we can do to address some of the concerns that have been raised. And I'm sure many of the Indonesian universities would be prepared to do that, and we'll do it in partnership with them as well. So I think that's a key message I've taken from today. The other thing I would say is sometimes we need to think disruptively, disruptive models, etc. And we need to think about experimentation. And we need to think about how we take risks together. And so if we do it in a sensible way, in a modest way, if we experiment and see how that might apply across the rest of the organization, that's something to consider as well. And I just really wanted to end on what I think is a very important topic, which is about the aging population. And the role of people as they get older in society going forwards. Now, it has been clinically proven through research that many people, when they retire, actually lose their way in life. And they have a lot to offer, and they have a lot to contribute. They have a lot of wisdom, a lot of knowledge. So you have the energy and the dynamism of the youth, tempered with the maturity and the experience of the old. That's a powerful combination if you can bring them. And old people love working together with young people. They receive that energy and they build on that energy. So again, we shouldn't just think about how we maybe bring some of the youth onto the board, but maybe some of the people that were there before us, because they would have lived through some of these life cycles that we're going through now. And we don't look back enough in history and do the analysis and try and learn from the mistakes of the past. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think concluded by Hugh in terms of the huge cycle of discussion that we had this morning. In terms of talent, really, I think we all have great talent in this room. I think there's great talent in every nation. The question is, how do you harness it? How do you shape it? And how do you direct it? I think that's also very critical. You can harness and shape it, but you can't direct it. It's also kind of meaningless. So I think the one takeaway, since the theme is takeaways, the one takeaway from this discussion really is that change is ongoing. So whatever industry we are in, whatever institution we are in, whatever occupation we are in, maybe we will have to continuously change and continuously learn. And no matter what age we are at, I think we all we're all young at heart. So thank you very much. Please join me in thanking the panel. And thank you also for participating.